Unaware that she was the only heiress to a $1 trillion empire, Ava stood silently in the mansion she once called home, while the man she loved looked her in the eyes and told her to leave. To him, she was nothing more than a quiet, ordinary wife with no money, no power, and no family worth respecting. He had chosen her glamorous best friend instead, the woman who smiled sweetly in public but had been waiting in the shadows to steal Ava's place. With his parents watching coldly and the servants whispering behind closed doors, Ava was handed divorce papers like she was being erased from a life she had helped build. No shouting, no begging, no tears. She simply picked up the pen, signed her name, and walked away without a single word. But what none of them knew was that Ava's silence was not weakness. Hidden behind her calm eyes was a secret powerful enough to destroy their pride in one night. She had just inherited the company that controlled their fortune, the same company where her ex-husband's parents worked, the same empire his family had bowed to for years without realizing its true owner had been living under their roof. Hours later, the family's celebration turned into horror when a private billionaire jet landed under Ava's name. Luxury cars arrived, executives stepped out, lawyers followed, and when Ava appeared in a designer coat, no longer the unwanted wife, but the untouchable woman who owned their future, every insult they had thrown at her came back like thunder. Her ex-husband froze, her best friend went pale, his parents could barely breathe. Because the woman they kicked out had not lost everything. She had just taken control of everything. And when Ava finally spoke, her decision shocked them more than the inheritance, the jet, the divorce, or the truth itself. Before we continue, what do you think about a husband who throws away a loyal wife because he thinks she has nothing, only to discover she owned the very future he was depending on? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this story will make you question loyalty, pride, betrayal, family, and silent power. Subscribe if you enjoy emotional stories filled with shocking twists, hidden identity, billionaire revenge, and unforgettable endings. Share this story with someone who loves dramatic life lessons and turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories like this. Ava Hart did not cry when the gates closed behind her. The iron bars, black and tall, swallowed the mansion slowly as the car rolled down the long driveway. For 3 years, she had passed through those gates as Mrs. Damien Whitmore, the quiet wife of a wealthy family's golden son. That night, she left as no one. At least, that was what they believed. The city lights of Belhaven trembled through the rainy windows. Ava sat in the back seat of the taxi with her small suitcase beside her, her hands folded neatly on her lap. On her ring finger, a pale mark remained where her wedding ring had rested for 3 years. She had removed it before signing the divorce papers, placing it on Damien's desk without a sound. Damien had watched her do it, with the bored expression of a man discarding an old document. He had not known that 1 hour earlier, a sealed inheritance file had been delivered to Ava's private attorney. He had not known that his father's employment contract, his mother's board privileges, his family's loans, and even the mansion they stood in were all connected to a corporation Ava had just inherited. He had not known that the woman he called useless was about to become the reason his world stopped breathing. The taxi driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Rough night, miss." Ava looked out at the rain. "No," she said quietly, "a necessary one." The driver did not understand the strange calm in her voice. He could not know that Ava had learned, long ago, how to bleed silently without letting the world see the wound. As a child, she had been raised in a small house on the edge of the city by a woman named Elena, who everyone thought was her aunt. Elena had taught her 3 things: never beg for love, never reveal your worth to people addicted to underestimating you, and never make a decision while angry. "You are not ordinary, Ava," Elena used to whisper while brushing her hair beside the kitchen window. "But ordinary people will teach you what powerful people never can." Back then, Ava had not understood. At 7, she only knew that Elena worked too much, smiled too little, and kept a locked wooden box beneath her bed. Ava had once asked what was inside. Elena had tapped her forehead gently and said, "A storm waiting for the right sky." Years later, Ava would learn that the box held original shares, letters, trusts, birth documents, and a name that had been hidden from her for her own safety. Aurelia Voss. That was the name she had been born with. Ava Hart was only the name used to protect her. At the Whitmore mansion, laughter filled the dining hall barely 15 minutes after Ava left. Damien Whitmore raised a glass of champagne while his parents sat proudly at the head of the table. His mother, Victoria, wore pearls that gleamed under the chandelier. His father, Charles, leaned back in his chair with the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had corrected an embarrassing mistake. Beside Damien sat Serena Vale, Ava's best friend, or the woman who had worn that title like a beautiful mask. Serena's red dress shimmered as she leaned closer to Damien, pressing her hand over his. "You finally did it," she whispered. "You chose your real future." Damien smiled. He was handsome in the way arrogant men often were: sharp jaw, clean suit, polished confidence, and eyes that rarely looked at people unless they were useful. "I should have done it sooner," he said. Victoria's lips curved. That girl was never suitable for this family. No background, no influence, no refinement. "I still don't understand why you married her." Damien's smile faded for a moment, just long enough for memory to slip through. 3 years earlier, Ava had found him outside a charity auction, leaning against a pillar with blood on his shirt from a minor accident he had tried to hide. Everyone else had been too busy taking photos and shaking hands to notice him pale and dizzy. Ava had noticed. She had taken him to a quiet hallway, pressed a towel to his cut, and called a doctor before he could protest. "You don't have to pretend you're fine," she had told him. No one had ever said that to Damien before. For a while, he had loved her for it. But love in the Whitmore family was treated like a weakness unless it came with status. Charles cleared his throat. "The important thing is that she signed. No scandal, no public crying, no messy fight, clean and finished." Serena laughed softly. "That's Ava, always quiet." But something about Ava's silence bothered Damien. He remembered the way she had looked at him before signing, not broken, not pleading, not even angry. Almost as if she knew something he did not. He pushed the thought away and lifted his glass to new beginnings. Everyone drank. At that exact moment, across the city, Ava stepped out of the taxi in front of a private building with no name on the door. 2 men in black suits were waiting beneath the awning. One of them, older and silver-haired, stepped forward with an umbrella. "Miss Voss," he said. The name entered the rainy night like a key turning in a lock. Ava paused. For 24 years, she had lived as Ava Hart. She had signed school papers, job applications, marriage forms, and hospital records with that name. But Miss Voss belonged to a world that had been watching her from behind tinted glass and silent boardrooms. "Mr. Calder," she said. Nathaniel Calder bowed his head. He had been her grandfather's chief legal advisor for 30 years, a man whose face appeared in financial journals but never in gossip columns. He had seen billionaires lose fortunes and ministers beg for favors. Yet when he looked at Ava, his voice softened. "I am sorry about tonight. You knew. We knew the divorce papers were being prepared. We did not know he would make you sign them in front of his family." Ava's fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase. "Good, let them remember the audience." Mr. Calder studied her carefully. "Your grandfather said you had your mother's patience." At the mention of her mother, something moved behind Ava's eyes. Her mother, Celeste Voss, had been the only daughter of Elias Voss, the founder of Voss Meridian Global, a trillion-dollar empire with companies in aviation, energy, infrastructure, banking, real estate, technology, and defense logistics. Celeste had disappeared from public life after marrying a man her father did not approve of. Then came the accident, then the silence, then Ava hidden under another name. All her life, Ava had been told that her parents died with little more than debts and memories. Only after Alina fell ill had the truth emerged in pieces. Elena was not her aunt. She had been Celeste's closest friend and private aide. She had taken Ava away when powerful relatives began fighting over the Voss succession. "Your grandfather wanted to bring you home sooner," Mr. Calder said as they entered the building. "But your safety came first. And now there is no one left with the legal power to keep you hidden." The elevator opened directly into a private office overlooking the city. On the glass tables sat a black folder, a silver pen, and a tablet displaying the Voss Meridian seal. Ava looked at the seal for a long time. It was a phoenix, wings open, holding a key. When she was a child, Elena had embroidered the same symbol inside Ava's old school bag. Ava had thought it was decoration. Now she realized she had carried her true family crest into classrooms where children mocked her second-hand shoes. The past had been leaving clues everywhere. She simply had not known how to read them. Mr. Calder opened the folder. "As of midnight, you are the controlling heir of Voss Meridian Global. Your grandfather's final conditions have been satisfied." "What conditions?" "You completed your education under your protected identity. You lived outside the influence of the Voss circle. You married without using the family name. And most importantly, you endured rejection without using power as a weapon." Ava almost laughed, but no sound came out. "So my humiliation was a test?" "No," Mr. Calder said firmly. "Your marriage was your choice. Your pain was not designed by us. But your grandfather believed that anyone who inherited his empire must understand what people do when they think you have nothing." Ava turned toward the window. Far below, the city moved in rivers of headlights. Somewhere behind those lights, Damien was probably celebrating. She remembered the first year of their marriage. He used to come home late from the office and find her awake in the kitchen, reading beside a cup of tea. He would loosen his tie and rest his head against her shoulder. "You're the only peaceful thing in my life," he once said. Ava had believed him. She had cooked for his parents when Victoria complained the household chef used too much salt. She had sat beside Charles in the hospital when Damien was stuck overseas. She had helped Damien rewrite speeches, prepare proposals, remember birthdays, repair staff conflicts, and hide family embarrassments from investors. But gradually, his gratitude became expectation, then expectation became annoyance, then annoyance became shame. At parties, he stopped introducing her as his wife and began saying, "This is Ava." When executives asked about her background, Victoria answered for her, "She prefers a simple life." When Serena joined their circle, she made simplicity sound like stupidity. "Oh, Ava doesn't care about business," Serena would say sweetly. "She's more of a home person." Ava cared. She cared so much that she had quietly corrected errors in Damien's acquisition reports at midnight while he slept. She had noticed financial risks his expensive consultants missed. She had once warned him that a shipping subsidiary tied to the Whitmore family was dangerously exposed to debt. Damien had kissed her forehead and said, "Don't worry your pretty little head about numbers." 3 months later, the same subsidiary nearly collapsed. Damien never asked how she had known. Mr. Calder placed the pen before her. "There is one matter requiring immediate attention." Ava turned, "Whitmore Holdings." His expression shifted slightly. "Your grandfather acquired a controlling interest in its parent company through Voss Meridian subsidiaries years ago. The Whitmore family believes they are protected by long-term internal alliances. They are not. Charles Whitmore is a senior regional director. Victoria sits on 2 charity boards funded through Voss Meridian. Damien's expansion loans are backed by assets that ultimately fall under your authority." Ava stared at the folder. So that was why Mr. Calder had come tonight. Not because she had inherited wealth. Because the first major decision of her new life involved the family that had just thrown her away. "Do they know?" she asked. "No. When will they know?" Mr. Calder looked at his watch. "The executive transition notice goes out at 6 in the morning." Ava slowly sat down. The rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers. "What did my grandfather want me to do?" she asked. "He left one handwritten note." Mr. Calder removed an envelope from the folder. The paper inside was thick, cream-colored, and marked with the same phoenix seal. Ava unfolded it. "My dear Aurelia, by the time you read this, you will have already learned the difference between being loved and being valued. Many will love what you give them, few will value who you are. Do not punish people for failing to know your name. Punish only cruelty, corruption, and betrayal. Power is not loud. Power is the door that remains closed until the right person touches the handle. When the Whitmores discover who you are, watch carefully. The first words out of their mouths will show you whether they deserve mercy." Elias Voss. Ava read the final line twice. The first words out of their mouths. Back at the mansion, Serena was in Ava's former bedroom. She walked barefoot across the carpet, touching the curtains, the vanity, the wardrobe, the photographs Ava had not taken with her. Damien stood by the door, uneasy. "Don't you think this is too soon?" he asked. Serena turned with a smile. "Too soon, Damien, she's gone. She lived here for 3 years. And I waited for 3 years. There it was, not love, possession." Damien looked at the bed and remembered Ava sitting there one winter morning, sewing a loose button on his coat. He had teased her for being old-fashioned. She had smiled and said, "Some things are worth repairing." He wondered when she had stopped trying to repair them. Serena picked up a small wooden hairpin from the vanity. She left this. Damien recognized it immediately. Ava wore it whenever she was nervous. It was plain, dark wood, carved with a tiny bird. He had never asked where it came from. Serena tossed it into the trash. Something in Damien flinched. "Don't," he said sharply. Serena froze. "What?" He walked over, took the hairpin from the trash, and placed it on the table. "I said don't." For a second, Serena's mask slipped. A flash of anger crossed her face before she covered it with a laugh. "You're sentimental tonight." "No, I just don't like cruelty." Serena stepped closer. "Cruelty? Damien, you divorced her in front of your parents." The words landed harder than he expected. Downstairs, Charles was in his study when his phone buzzed. He ignored it at first, then it buzzed again and again. By the 6th notification, he frowned and opened it. A message from a colleague at Voss Meridian appeared on the screen. "Have you heard anything about tomorrow's executive transition? They say the controlling heir is finally stepping in." Charles sat forward. The controlling heir. For years, that phrase had been whispered in corporate circles like a ghost story. Elias Voss, the old titan, had built one of the largest private empires in the world, but his direct heir had vanished from public records. Some said the heir was dead. Others said hidden abroad. A few believed Voss Meridian was quietly controlled by trustees because no true successor existed. Charles had always hoped the mystery remained unresolved. A hidden owner meant opportunity for men like him. He typed back, "No details yet, keep me informed." Then another message arrived from a senior board member. "Emergency call at 6:30 a.m. mandatory." Charles's champagne warmth vanished. At 5:58 a.m., Ava stood in a private airport hangar wearing a long ivory coat over a black dress. Her hair was pinned back with the wooden bird hairpin Serena had thrown away in another version of the night because Ava had taken its twin with her. Elena had carved both by hand. A white jet waited beneath the hangar lights. On its side, in silver letters, were the initials AVG. Aurelia Voss Global. Mr. Calder stood beside her with a team of lawyers and executives. The transition notice is ready. Once released, every regional office, subsidiary, banking partner, and board authority will receive it. Ava looked at the jet. A memory rose uninvited. She was 12, sitting beside Elena on a bus during a storm. A luxury plane had flown low above the city, and Ava had pressed her face to the window. "Imagine owning something like that," she had whispered. Elena had not looked at the plane, she had looked at Ava. "Some things already belong to you before you are ready to carry them." But Ava had thought Elena was talking nonsense. Now the words felt like prophecy. "Send it," Ava said. At exactly 6:00 a.m., the message went out. At exactly 6:03 a.m., Charles Whitmore's phone rang. He answered in his robe, irritated and half awake. Charles Whitmore. The voice on the other end belonged to Voss Meridian's chief compliance officer. "Mr. Whitmore, you are required to attend the emergency executive call at 6:30. This is regarding the formal installation of the controlling heir." Charles straightened. "The heir confirmed." "Yes. Who?" There was a pause. "That information will be disclosed on the call." Victoria entered the study, tying her silk robe. "What is it?" Charles covered the phone. "The Voss heir is stepping in." Her eyes widened. After all these years. Damien appeared in the doorway, still in yesterday's shirt. "What's going on?" Before Charles could answer, Damien's phone buzzed. Then Victoria. Then Serena's from upstairs. The mansion that had celebrated Ava's removal only hours earlier began waking into panic. At 6:30, Charles connected the call to the large screen in the study. Victoria sat beside him tense. Damien stood behind them with folded arms. Serena lingered near the window, pretending not to care, though her eyes were fixed on the screen. Several executives appeared in small boxes. Then the center screen went black. The Voss Meridian seal appeared. A phoenix holding a key. Damien frowned. He had seen that symbol before. Not in boardrooms. Not on documents. On Ava's old hairpin. The thought passed too quickly for him to catch. Mr. Calder appeared on screen. "Good morning. By authority of the Voss Meridian Global Trust, and in accordance with the final directive of Elias Voss, we hereby announce the controlling heir and chairwoman of the Voss Meridian Global Private Holding Structure." Charles leaned forward. Victoria stopped breathing. The screen shifted. Ava appeared. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. She stood in the airport hangar, calm and untouchable, with the jet behind her and a wall of executives at her side. Her face was the same face that had sat at the Whitmore breakfast table, poured tea for Victoria, listened to Charles's lectures, and endured Serena's soft insults. But everything else was different. Her silence no longer looked like obedience. It looked like command. Mr. Calder's voice continued. "Please welcome Chairwoman Aurelia Voss, known previously under protected identity as Ava Hart." Victoria gasped. Serena's hand flew to her mouth. Charles rose from his chair so abruptly it scraped the floor. Damien stared at the screen as if the world had tilted and left him standing on glass. Ava's eyes moved across the camera, calm, measured, unreadable. "Good morning," she said. "Effective immediately, all executive privileges connected to Voss Meridian subsidiaries will undergo review. Any regional director, board affiliate, or financing beneficiary with conflicts of interest will be subject to immediate audit." Charles's face drained of color. Audit. That word did not scare innocent men. It terrified men who had built their comfort on hidden favors. Victoria whispered, No, this is impossible." Damien heard her, but he could not speak. His mind had gone backward against his will. Ava correcting numbers on his laptop. Ava asking why his father's division had unusual procurement delays. Ava quietly suggesting that Serena's boutique investment fund looked unstable. Ava telling him 3 nights before the divorce Damien, be careful who you trust with signatures." He had laughed. "You sound jealous," he had said. She had looked at him with a sadness he now understood too late. "No, I sound experienced." On the screen, Ava continued. "Some of you have served this company faithfully. Some of you have used proximity to power as if it were ownership. The difference will become clear." Her gaze lowered for a moment, as if reading something off-screen. Then she looked directly into the camera. "Mr. Charles Whitmore, remain available after this call." Charles gripped the desk. The call ended. For a long moment, the study was silent. Then Serena spoke first. "This has to be fake." Damien turned slowly. "Fake." "She tricked you," Serena snapped. "She must have planned this. She trapped you, Damien. She married you to get close to your family." Charles looked at her with sudden irritation. "Get close to us, we work for her." The words struck the room like a slap. "We work for her." Victoria sank into the chair. "I threw her out." No one corrected her, because they all knew it was true. Damien walked out of the study without a word. He went upstairs to Ava's room. No, not Ava's room anymore, he reminded himself, though the thought felt wrong. Serena followed him. "Where are you going?" she demanded. Damien opened the vanity drawer. Empty, the wardrobe empty, the bedside table. Inside, he found a folded note. His name was written on it, in Ava's handwriting. For a moment, his chest tightened. He unfolded it quickly. But there were only 5 words. "You chose without knowing me." That was all. No accusations, no tears, no explanation. Just a sentence sharp enough to cut through every excuse he had prepared. Serena snatched it from his hand. "She's playing the victim." Damien took it back. "Don't touch it." Serena stared at him. "You're defending her now." "I don't know what I'm doing." "I do," Serena said coldly. "You're regretting what you did because she turned out rich." Damien looked at her, and for the first time since they had begun their affair of emotional intimacy and whispered promises, he saw something ugly beneath her beauty. "And what are you doing?" he asked, panicking because she turned out powerful. Serena's face tightened. Downstairs, Charles's private line rang again. He answered with a trembling voice. "Mr. Whitmore," said Mr. Calder, "Chairwoman Voss will meet with you at 9. "At Voss, Meridian headquarters." "No, at the Whitmore mansion." Charles blinked. "Here." "Yes, she is returning." At 8:52 a.m., the gates of the Whitmore mansion opened. This time, Ava did not arrive in a taxi. 3 black cars entered first, followed by 2 security vehicles. Then came a silver car with tinted windows. Behind them, staff members gathered near the entrance, whispering in shock. Damien stood on the front steps. Charles and Victoria stood beside him, dressed in formal clothes, as if clothing could rebuild dignity. Serena stood slightly behind Damien, pale but defiant. The car door opened. Ava stepped out. No crown, no dramatic smile, no shouting. That was what made it worse. She did not look like someone seeking revenge. She looked like someone arriving for business. The same woman they had dismissed walked up the steps, but each step seemed to erase the version of her they had invented. The poor wife, the quiet burden, the woman with no family, the woman who should be grateful. All gone. Mr. Calder walked at her right. Another attorney carried a case. 2 executives followed. Victoria tried to speak first, but her voice failed. Charles forced a smile. Ava. Ava stopped. The air changed. Charles corrected himself. Chairwoman Voss. Ava looked at him for a long, steady second. Now you know my name. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Damien flinched. Serena stepped forward. Ava, surely we can talk as friends. Ava turned to her. For years, Serena had borrowed Ava's dresses and returned them stained. She had eaten at Ava's table while sending Damien messages late at night. She had smiled through apologies she never meant. She had once held Ava's hands after a dinner party and said, "You're lucky Damien married someone so simple. Powerful women intimidate men." Ava had smiled back then. Because even before she knew the full truth of her inheritance, she knew insecurity when it wore perfume. "Friends," Ava repeated. Serena swallowed. "You were my friend when you asked what Damien liked for breakfast. You were my friend when you borrowed my earrings for a charity event and wore them while standing beside my husband. You were my friend when you told Victoria I was too plain for this family. You were my friend when you advised Damien that divorcing me quietly would protect his reputation." Serena's face went white. Damien turned sharply. "You advised that?" Serena opened her mouth, but no answer came. Ava looked away, already finished with her. Inside the mansion, the meeting took place in the same dining hall where they had toasted her disappearance the night before. Ava sat at the head of the table. Charles sat opposite her, sweating beneath his collar. Victoria sat rigidly, hands folded. Damien remained standing near the fireplace until Ava glanced at a chair. "Sit," she said. He sat. Serena tried to take the chair beside him. Ava did not look at her. "This meeting concerns Whitmore family business and Voss Meridian assets. You have no official role here, Miss Vale." Serena's lips parted. "I'm Damien's fiancée." "No," Ava said calmly. "You are the woman he intended to marry after divorcing me. That does not give you standing in this room." The silence that followed was colder than insult. Serena looked at Damien, waiting for him to defend her. He did not. She left the room with the stiff posture of a woman who had expected a throne and found a locked door. Mr. Calder opened the case and distributed documents. Ava did not touch hers. She already knew what they said. "Mr. Whitmore," she began, looking at Charles, "your division has approved inflated vendor contracts for 4 years. Several vendors are connected to private accounts controlled by your associates. 2 are connected to family trusts. 1 is connected to a company where Miss Vale's name appears as a silent beneficiary." Damien's head snapped toward his father. Charles stammered, "Those contracts were reviewed by people you recommended." Victoria's face changed. "Charles." He ignored her. "Chairwoman, these matters are complicated. Regional operations require flexibility. Fraud often calls itself flexibility before the audit begins." Charles went still. Damien stared at the documents, seeing numbers he should have questioned, numbers Ava had once tried to question for him. A flashback struck him so sharply that he almost closed his eyes. Ava standing in his study months ago, holding a report. "Damien, your father's vendor margins are unusually high." He had been irritated, exhausted, and embarrassed that she had read a file he left open. "Ava, please, you don't understand corporate finance." She had placed the report down carefully. "Maybe not, but I understand patterns. Stop trying to prove yourself." The memory burned. He had not simply underestimated her. He had trained himself not to hear her. Ava turned to Victoria. "Mrs. Whitmore, your charity board used Voss Meridian funding for events that produced no measurable public benefit. However, the events did produce social access for your family and private introductions for Damien's expansion plans." Victoria's chin trembled. "Every wealthy family does charity networking. Not every wealthy family bills it as humanitarian outreach." Victoria looked down. Then Ava looked at Damien. He braced himself. "Damien Whitmore," she said. His name in her voice felt unbearable. "Your expansion loans are over-leveraged. You signed guarantees based on projected partnerships that were never finalized. You allowed Miss Vale's fund to influence strategic introductions. You also used marital property declarations to strengthen your personal credibility while publicly minimizing your wife's contribution. Damien's throat tightened. Ava, I didn't know. That is not a defense. That is a confession of negligence. He had no answer. Because she was right. Ava leaned back slightly. Here is what will happen. Charles Whitmore is suspended pending full investigation. Victoria Whitmore is removed from all Voss-funded boards effective immediately. Damien's pending loan extensions are frozen until independent review. Any attempt to transfer assets, destroy documents, pressure staff, or contact auditors privately will trigger legal escalation. Charles looked as if he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Victoria whispered, "You would destroy us." Ava's eyes moved to her. "No, Mrs. Whitmore, you mistook accountability for destruction because you are used to consequence falling on other people." Damien bowed his head. The words settled into the room with the weight of a verdict. Then something unexpected happened. Ava stood. "I am not here to discuss the divorce. That was completed last night." Damien looked up quickly. "Ava." She raised one hand, and he stopped. "There is nothing to repair. You did not make one mistake. You made a series of choices. You let your parents humiliate me. You let Serena enter our marriage through the doors I opened to her as a friend. You accepted my loyalty when it benefited you and dismissed my mind when it challenged you." His eyes reddened, but she did not soften. "Last night when you handed me those papers, you believed I had no protection. That was the real test, not whether you could love me when I was powerful, whether you could respect me when you thought I was powerless." No one spoke. Ava turned to leave. But Damien stood. "Did you ever love me?" he asked. For the first time that morning, Ava paused. The question reached something buried, something not yet healed. She could have answered with cruelty. She could have said no and watched him collapse inside, but truth had always been cleaner than revenge. "Yes," she said, "that was the tragedy." Then she walked out. Outside the dining hall, Serena waited in the corridor, her face twisted with fear and anger. "You think you won," Serena hissed. Ava stopped. "Won," Ava repeated. "You still think this was a competition?" Serena stepped closer. "Damien loved me." "No, Damien desired the version of himself he saw beside you, richer, admired, untouched by responsibility. You gave him a mirror, I gave him truth. People often prefer mirrors." Serena's eyes flashed. "You're not better than me." "I know." That answer confused Serena. Ava looked at her calmly. "Being better than you was never my ambition." Then she continued walking. Serena stood frozen, defeated not by insult, but by irrelevance. By noon, the news had begun spreading through corporate circles. The hidden Voss heir had appeared. Ava Hart was Aurelia Voss. The Whitmore family was under review. No public statement mentioned the divorce, but society did not need official confirmation. Servants talked, drivers talked, assistants talked, lawyers talked without technically talking. By evening, the same people who had once ignored Ava at charity dinners were sending invitations, flowers, apologies, and requests for meetings. Ava accepted none of them. She returned to Voss Meridian headquarters and entered the top-floor office that had belonged to Elias Voss. The room was vast, lined with books, maps, old contracts, and photographs of bridges, ports, hospitals, aircraft, and cities the company had helped build. Behind the desk hung a portrait of Elias, stern-eyed and silver-haired. Ava stood before it. "You left me a kingdom," she whispered, "but not instructions for loneliness." Mr. Calder, standing near the doorway, heard but did not answer. On the desk sat another envelope. Ava recognized her grandfather's handwriting. Aurelia, after the first betrayal. Her breath caught. She opened it slowly. "My dear girl, if you are reading this, then someone has mistaken your quietness for emptiness. Good. Let them. A cup must look empty before anyone notices what is poured into it. You will be tempted to prove everything at once. Don't. Power revealed too quickly becomes theater. Power revealed with precision becomes law. You are not inheriting my empire to avenge your pain. You are inheriting it to decide what pain does not get to continue. Begin with the employees. Find the ones ignored by people like Charles Whitmore. They will tell you the truth faster than executives. And remember this, when a man says he did not know your worth, he is really saying he measured you with broken tools. IV. Ava folded the letter and closed her eyes. Begin with the employees. That evening, instead of attending the emergency board dinner arranged in her honor, Ava went to the regional operations building where Charles had worked. She arrived without cameras and asked to speak privately with lower-level staff. At first, they were afraid. Then one woman, an accounts analyst named Myra, began to cry. I reported the vendor issue twice, Myra said, wiping her cheeks. Mr. Whitmore's office buried it. After that, my promotion disappeared. Another employee said his team had been pressured to approve invoices before review. A junior manager admitted that Serena's fund had been given access to private networking events, not meant for outside investors. Ava listened to every word. She did not interrupt. She did not perform outrage. She wrote names, dates, and details in a black notebook. At the end, Myra looked at her uncertainly. Madam Chairwoman, may I ask something? Yes. Is it true you were married to Mr. Whitmore? The room went still. Ava closed the notebook. Yes. Myra hesitated. Then this must be personal for you. Ava thought about the divorce papers, the champagne, Serena in her bedroom, Victoria's cold smile, Damien's eyes avoiding hers. It is personal, Ava said, but personal pain does not make the evidence false. The employees understood then. This was not revenge disguised as justice. This was justice sharpened by memory. Meanwhile, Damien sat alone in his apartment, staring at the wooden hairpin he had taken from Ava's vanity. Serena had called him 17 times. He had not answered. His mother had sent messages begging him to speak to Ava. His father had demanded strategy. Lawyers had requested documents. Reporters had begun circling. But Damien could only think about one thing. The first time Ava met Serena. It had been at a gallery opening. Serena had swept into the room like perfume and camera flashes, charming everyone within seconds. Ava had admired one painting quietly in the corner, a storm over a field of white flowers. Serena had approached her with a bright smile. You must be Damien's wife. You're so different from what I expected. Ava had smiled politely. Different how? Serena had laughed, peaceful. At the time, Damien thought it was a compliment. Now he heard the blade hidden inside. He remembered how Serena slowly entered their lives. A lunch here, a charity committee there, advice about styling, networking, social image. She never attacked Ava directly at first. She simply made Ava seem smaller. Damien needs someone ambitious beside him. Ava is sweet, but she doesn't understand your world. You shouldn't have to explain everything to your wife. She holds you back because she doesn't know how high you can rise. And he had listened because Serena made his vanity sound like destiny. Damien picked up his phone and called Ava. It rang once, twice. Then Mr. Calder answered. Mr. Whitmore, Chairwoman Voss is unavailable. I need to speak with her. On what matter? Damien's voice broke despite his effort to control it. On the matter of being sorry. There was a pause. Your apology can be submitted in writing. The call ended. Damien stared at the phone. Submitted in writing. Like a petition. like a man outside a gate. At the Whitmore mansion, Victoria sat in Ava's former room, surrounded by things she had never noticed before: a shelf of business strategy books, a notebook filled with elegant calculations, a framed photo of Elena, the woman Victoria had dismissed as that aunt from nowhere, a small embroidered cloth with the phoenix symbol. "How did we not see it?" Victoria whispered. Charles stood by the window, furious, because there was nothing to see. Victoria turned. "No, because we refused to look." Charles glared. "Do not become sentimental. That girl is moving against us." "That girl," Victoria said, voice shaking, "owns the company that paid for your career." His face darkened. "I built my career." "Then why are you afraid of an audit?" Charles said nothing. That silence frightened Victoria more than any answer. She had been cruel to Ava because cruelty was easy when protected by wealth. She had criticized her clothes, her voice, her lack of connections. She had watched Serena humiliate her at dinners with polished little jokes. She had convinced herself Ava was beneath them because admitting otherwise would require kindness. But now Victoria remembered small things. Ava bringing her ginger tea when migraines struck. Ava remembering the anniversary of Victoria's late sister when even Charles forgot. Ava quietly replacing a broken family ornament and never saying she had paid for it. Victoria had mistaken gentleness for low status. Now she understood that gentleness had been the only nobility in the house. The next morning, Ava entered the main boardroom of Voss Meridian Global. 32 executives stood as she walked in. Some looked curious, some nervous, some offended that a woman they had never seen in their circles now held power over their careers. Ava saw all of it. She had spent years being underestimated in dining rooms. A boardroom was only a dining room with sharper chairs. She took her seat. "Sit," she said. Everyone sat. A senior executive named Roland Pierce began with a polished smile. "Chairwoman Voss, on behalf of the Executive Council, let me say what an honor it is to finally welcome." Ava opened a folder. "Mr. Pierce, your welcome is noted. Your department approved 3 risk reports that excluded internal complaints from the Whitmore region. Why?" His smile faltered. "Those complaints were considered unverified." "By whom?" "Regional leadership." "Charles Whitmore." "Yes, but..." So the person accused of suppressing complaints was allowed to determine whether complaints about him mattered. Silence spread. Ava looked around the table. "Let us save time. I did not come here to be welcomed. I came here to learn who protects the company and who protects each other." No one smiled after that. For 6 hours, Ava questioned them. She knew figures, she knew dates, she knew buried memos, delayed reports, unusual payments, and suspicious promotions. Some executives began sweating, others began respecting her despite themselves. By the end of the meeting, 3 internal reviews had been launched, 2 executives were placed on leave, and Myra, the ignored analyst, was appointed to a special audit team. When the room emptied, Mr. Calder approached Ava. "Your grandfather would have been proud." Ava looked at the city beyond the glass. "Pride is expensive, let's hope I can afford it." That night, Damien came to Voss Meridian headquarters. He was not allowed past the lobby. The security guard was polite but firm. "Chairwoman Voss is not accepting visitors." "I'm her husband." The word slipped out before he could stop it. The guard glanced at his tablet. "Our records say former husband." Damien stepped back as if struck. "Former." The smallest words often carried the biggest ruins. He sat in the lobby for 2 hours. Executives passed him. Some recognized him. None greeted him with the warmth he was used to. By the 3rd hour, Serena appeared at the entrance, wearing sunglasses though it was night. "So this is what you've become," she said, "waiting in lobbies." Damien stood. "Go home, Serena. We need to talk." No, you need to explain. She removed her sunglasses. Explain what? Your connection to the vendor accounts, your fund, your advice to divorce Ava quietly, all of it. Serena laughed, but her voice shook. You're blaming me now, you signed the papers, you chose me. Yes, he said, and that is my shame, but you lied. So did she, Serena snapped. She hid who she was. Damien looked at her with sudden clarity. She hid her name, you hid your intentions. Serena's expression hardened. You think she'll take you back because you're acting noble now? No. The answer seemed to surprise both of them. Damien looked toward the elevator where Ava would not appear. She shouldn't. For the first time, Serena looked truly afraid. Because Damien's regret was no longer useful to her. 3 days later, the audit uncovered the first undeniable proof. A chain of payments connected inflated vendor contracts to shell entities tied to Charles's associates. One shell had transferred money into a private investment vehicle. That vehicle had quietly supported Serena's failing luxury brand. The story broke before dawn. Not because Ava leaked it. Because someone else did. Charles blamed Damien. Damien blamed no one. Serena blamed Ava publicly, posting a vague statement about powerful women destroying other women out of jealousy. It lasted 12 minutes before Myra's audit team released documented corrections through official channels. Serena deleted the statement. But screenshots lived forever. By noon, Serena's brand partners began withdrawing. Invitations vanished. Friends became unreachable. The same society that had laughed with her at Ava's expense now treated her like a stain on expensive fabric. She arrived at Voss Meridian headquarters unannounced, demanding to see Ava. This time, Ava agreed. Serena entered Ava's office with fury barely contained. You ruined me, she said. Ava remained seated. You attached yourself to dishonest money. I removed the covering. You think you're innocent, Serena demanded. You pretended to be poor. I lived under a protected identity. You let us insult you. Ava's eyes sharpened. No, you chose to insult me. Serena opened her mouth, then closed it. Ava stood and walked to the window. Do you know the saddest thing about you, Serena? I don't need your sermon. You could have been brilliant without being cruel. You had charm, intelligence, access, but instead of building something real, you built yourself out of comparisons. You did not want Damien because you loved him. You wanted him because he belonged to someone you thought you could defeat. Serena's eyes filled with angry tears. You don't know me. I did, that was my mistake. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Serena whispered, did you ever suspect? Ava turned. There was the question, beneath all questions. Ava remembered Serena's hand lingering on Damien's sleeve, the sudden private jokes, the way Damien began criticizing Ava with phrases Serena used, the dinner where Serena wore Ava's borrowed earrings and Damien noticed them too fondly, the night Ava found a message on Damien's phone, she'll never understand men like us. Yes, Ava said. Then why didn't you fight? Ava's answer was quiet, because a husband is not a chair to be guarded. If someone can take him by flattering his weakness, he was never standing beside me. Serena looked away. For 1 second, her mask cracked not into anger, but into shame. Then she rebuilt it. You'll be alone, Serena said. People like you always are. Ava smiled faintly. Alone is not the same as empty. Security escorted Serena out. But as she left, Ava noticed something in her own chest. Not triumph, not satisfaction, not even relief. Just tiredness. Winning against betrayal did not return the years it stole. A week later, Charles Whitmore resigned before he could be removed. It was not graceful. His resignation letter blamed politically motivated restructuring and personal vendettas. Ava did not respond publicly. She simply approved the legal process and let the evidence speak. Victoria requested a private meeting. Ava almost refused. Then she remembered her grandfather's note. The first words out of their mouths will show you whether they deserve mercy. Victoria arrived without pearls. It was the first time Ava had seen her look like a person instead of a portrait. She entered the office slowly, hands clasped. Ava did not offer tea. Victoria noticed. "I deserve that," she said. Ava waited. Victoria's eyes lowered. "I came to apologize, not because you are powerful, though I know it looks that way now. I came because I have been replaying every moment I made you feel unwelcome, and I cannot find one excuse that does not make me smaller." Ava said nothing. Encouraged or frightened by the silence, Victoria continued. "I thought status made a person worthy. I taught Damien the same sickness. I called it standards. It was pride." Her voice broke. "You were kind to me. I punished you for not being impressive in ways I understood." Ava studied her. The apology was late, but it was not polished. It did not ask for restoration. It did not demand forgiveness as payment for regret. "What do you want, Mrs. Whitmore?" Victoria swallowed. "Nothing. That is why I came. I wanted to say it before lawyers, society, and fear swallowed the truth. I am sorry, Ava. I am sorry for what I did when I thought you had no power to answer me." There it was. The first honest sentence. Ava looked down at her grandfather's pen on the desk. "Your apology is heard," she said. Victoria closed her eyes, tears slipping down her face. "Thank you." Heard is not the same as accepted. Victoria nodded quickly. "I understand." "Do you?" "Yes." Ava leaned back. "Then understand this too. I will not protect you from consequences, but I will not manufacture extra pain for entertainment. Whatever comes will come from the truth." Victoria whispered, "That is more mercy than I gave you." "Yes," Ava said, "it is." After Victoria left, Ava sat alone for a long time. The city outside glowed gold in the late afternoon. Her reflection looked back from the glass. Ava and Aurelia layered over each other, wife and heiress, abandoned woman and chairwoman, wound and weapon. Her phone buzzed. A message from Damien. "I submitted the apology in writing, not because I expect forgiveness, because you deserved words when I gave you silence." Attached was a letter. Ava did not open it immediately. For 3 days, it remained unread. During those 3 days, Vos Meridian changed faster than anyone expected. Ava froze questionable contracts, promoted overlooked staff, created whistleblower protections, and ordered a full review of executive culture. Media outlets tried to frame her as a mysterious billionaire divorcee seeking revenge, but the company's employees began telling a different story. She listens. She knows the numbers. She remembers names. She asks the assistants what the executives forgot. She doesn't shout. She doesn't need to. That became the most frightening thing about Ava Voss. She did not perform power. She practiced it. On the 4th night, Ava finally opened Damien's letter. "Ava, I have rewritten this 20 times because every version tries to make me sound better than I was. You warned me, you helped me, you loved me. I repaid you with embarrassment, neglect, and betrayal. I told myself I was choosing ambition, but I was choosing applause. Serena made me feel important because she never asked me to be honest. You did, and I punished you for it. I failed you privately before, I humiliated you publicly. I do not ask you to come back. I do not deserve that question. I only want to say that last night, when I called you my wife in the lobby and the guard corrected me, I understood that a title can disappear faster than the love it wasted. You once told me some things are worth repairing. I know now that some things are worth mourning because repair would insult the damage. I am sorry. Damien. Ava read the letter once. Then again. She did not cry, but she did place it carefully in a drawer instead of throwing it away. Some apologies did not heal the wound, but they stopped adding poison. 2 months passed. Charles faced legal proceedings. Serena's social empire collapsed, then revealed itself to have been mostly borrowed money and borrowed influence. Victoria moved out of the mansion and began working quietly with a legitimate foundation, far from cameras. Damien sold several personal assets to repay debts connected to his failed expansion and stepped down from public leadership. The Whitmore mansion, once a symbol of superiority, was listed for sale. Ava bought it anonymously through a housing trust. Not to live in. To turn it into a residential scholarship home for young women agging out of foster care. Women with no family names to protect them, no rich parents, no safety net, no powerful last name on their documents. When Mr. Calder heard the plan, he smiled for the first time in days. Your grandfather would have liked that. Ava walked through the empty mansion one final time before renovation began. The dining hall was bare. The chandelier had been removed. Her old bedroom smelled of dust and paint. In the study, outlines remained on the wall where Charles's portraits had hung. She stood where she had signed the divorce papers. For a moment, the room filled itself with ghosts. Damien's cold expression. Victoria's satisfaction. Charles's impatience. Serena's hidden smile. The pen in Ava's hand. The silence afterward. Then the memory shifted. She saw herself not as abandoned, but as released. That was the secret no one understood. Sometimes the door people kick you through is the same door that leads back to yourself. A voice sounded behind her. Ava. She turned. Damien stood at the entrance of the study. He looked thinner, humbler, older. He wore no expensive watch, no perfect arrogance, just a man standing in the ruins of what his pride had cost him. I heard about the scholarship home, he said. Ava did not ask how he got in. The staff would have recognized him. Once, this had been his home too. It is not open yet, she said. I know, I came to leave something. He held out a small box. Ava looked at it, but did not take it. What is it? The ring. Her wedding ring. I found it in my desk after everything. I thought about keeping it. Then I realized that would be another way of taking something from you. Ava accepted the box. Their fingers did not touch. Damien looked around the room. You turned this place into something better than we deserved. No, Ava said. I turned it into something better than what happened here. He nodded, accepting the correction. For a while, they stood in silence. Then Damien said, I loved you badly. Ava looked at him. It was the truest thing he had ever said. Yes, she replied. He swallowed. I'm learning what that means. Good. A faint, sad smile moved across his face. That is all I get. That is more than you gave me when I was learning pain. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he did not argue. I hope you are happy someday, he said. Ava looked past him to the open doorway, where sunlight entered the hall. I am not waiting for someday. Damien nodded again, then he left. This time, Ava watched him go. Not with longing. Not with hatred. With the strange peace of someone closing a book that had taught her too much to regret, but hurt too much to reread. 1 year later, the Ava Voss Leadership House opened its doors. No one knew why Ava chose that location at first. Reporters speculated, society whispered, some called it symbolic revenge, others called it brilliant public relations. But on opening day, Ava stood before a group of young women in the renovated hall and told them the truth. This house once taught me what it feels like to be unwanted, she said. So I decided it should spend the rest of its life teaching others they are worthy of being welcomed. In the front row sat Myra, now Director of Ethical Finance at Voss Meridian. Beside her sat Mr. Calder, whose eyes shone with quiet pride. Victoria sat in the back, invited not as family, but as a donor who had spent the past year proving that remorse could become work. Damien did not attend, but he sent a letter with no request attached. Ava did not read it that day. She was too busy opening doors. That evening, after the cameras left and the girls explored their new rooms, Ava walked alone to the garden behind the mansion. The old rose bushes had been trimmed, new trees had been planted. A stone path led to a small fountain where moonlight trembled on the water. Mr. Calder found her there. "There is one final item from your grandfather," he said. Ava turned. "Another letter." "Yes, he instructed me to give it to you when you made the empire yours, rather than simply inherited it." He handed her the envelope. Ava opened it beneath the garden lights. "My dear Aurelia, blood can give you a name, loss can give you wisdom, betrayal can give you sight, but only choice can give you yourself. By now you have learned that power is not revenge, though revenge often begs to borrow its clothing. You have learned that silence can be mistaken for surrender by people who fear what they cannot measure. And you have learned that the world will always ask women to prove what men are allowed to assume. Do not spend your life proving. Build, protect, choose. And when they finally ask what shocked them most, let it not be the jet, the money, the company, or the name. Let it be that after all they did, you became more merciful than they were, but never weak enough to return to the fire that burned you. Your grandfather, who knew you before the world did." Ava folded the letter with steady hands. For the first time since the divorce, tears filled her eyes. Not because Damien was gone. Not because Serena betrayed her. Not because the Whitmores had fallen. But because Elena, her mother, her grandfather, and every hidden piece of her life suddenly felt present in the garden, as if they had all been leading her to this moment, not to watch her destroy a family, but to watch her become impossible to destroy. Behind her, laughter floated from the house. Young women choosing rooms. Staff arranging welcome baskets. A future beginning where humiliation once ended. Ava looked up at the mansion's windows, glowing warmly against the night. Once she had walked out of that house with one suitcase and no goodbye. Now the house belonged to girls who would never have to beg for a place inside it. Her phone buzzed. A news alert appeared. Aurelia Voss redefines billionaire power with historic youth leadership initiative. Ava smiled faintly and turned the phone face down. The world still wanted headlines, but Ava was done living as one. She walked back toward the house, her ivory coat moving softly in the wind, the phoenix pin at her collar catching the light. At the door, one of the younger girls stopped her. "Miss Voss." Ava turned. "Yes." The girl hesitated. "Is it true you used to live here?" Ava looked at the staircase, the hall, the dining room, the places where Payne had once worn expensive clothes. "Yes," she said. "Was it happy?" Ava thought for a moment. Then she knelt slightly so they were eye to eye. "Not always." The girl's face fell. Ava smiled gently. "But that is why we must be careful. A place does not become good because beautiful people live in it. It becomes good when honest people decide what will happen there next." The girl considered this seriously. "So we can make it good." Ava's smile deepened. "Yes," she said, "that is exactly what we are going to do." From somewhere inside the house, a bell rang for dinner. Not a cold dinner under a chandelier full of judgment. Not a celebration of someone being thrown away. A real dinner. Warm, loud, imperfect, alive. Ava stepped inside. And for the first time, the mansion welcomed her back without asking who she belonged to. Because now, Ava knew the answer. She belonged to herself. Dear viewers, what do you think about Ava's decision? Was she right to walk away forever, hold the Whitmores accountable, and turn the place of her humiliation into a home for others? Or do you think forgiveness should have opened the door to a second chance? Share your views in the comments, because your opinion matters. Subscribe if you enjoy powerful stories about betrayal, hidden identity, justice, and life-changing revenge with meaning. Share this story with your friends and family, and turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories like this.